So this week we had all 14 members of the Dallas City Council and reported without public input had fast-tracked and voted unanimously to approve new language that would allow transgender Dallas residents to use the restrooms of the opposite sex. Now this comes 1 week after Houston voted to repeal the same ordinance passed by their city council. And of course this was a huge national story, and now after Houston's spot in the national limelight, now it seems like Dallas might be taking its place in that limelight. Joining me here in studio is Dallas Councilman Philip Kingston, and also joining us via Skype is Texas Values President Jonathan Saenz. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for being here. And Philip, I'll talk with you because we were talking on Twitter a little bit yesterday. So give me some insight into this. So this ordinance has been here since what, 2002?
Yes.
And it included language for, LGBT. But what was, and from what I understand, everything that was reported is that, it doesn't change anything. The language that was added later, the language that was modified this week, it doesn't change anything. But if it didn't change anything, then why was the language altered, I guess, is my point. What am I missing here?
Back in 2002, we had mistakenly put gender identity under the sexual orientation subheading, and it really has nothing to do with sexual orientation. So it's really just a language cleanup.
And Jonathan, welcome to the program. I appreciate you being here. Because I have read, I was looking at even the way some local news here, local at least with respects to Dallas, the way I had seen it reported is that there wasn't a lot of fanfare about it. And maybe one of the reasons that the public didn't show up is because they weren't quite sure exactly what was happening. Give us your thoughts on this, because you were one of the individuals that said this was fast-tracked, and you did oppose the modification to this ordinance.
Well, sure, Dana, look, this bathroom bill is something that the Dallas people clearly rejecting. I'm sure the city council member is being inundated with phone calls at City Hall. Social media has exploded on this issue, coming off a clear message in Houston, where the Houston people sent a clear message when they were actually allowed to vote at the ballot box. 61-39, they rejected this. Why? Because this type of Dallas bathroom ordinance, just like the one in Houston, threatens the safety of women and children. And it's something that when the public actually is able to see what it is and they're informed about it, they reject it. And that's a diverse group of people that reject it. And so this, look, it's been reported that there was a closed session meeting on Monday night where some new language came about and they tried to fast track it on Tuesday morning.
That's just flat false.
And a lot of the LGBT advocates were already reporting on social media before there was even a vote that it was going to be approved at noon. So it's clear that the fix has kind of been in on this. But, now that the people are allowed to see what it is, they're clearly rejecting it. And so, that is
also
these kind
false.
of efforts to try to keep the people out of the process are the type of Washington style and Obama tactics that didn't work in Houston, and they're not going to work in Dallas.
We've had a number, because after I brought this up on my radio program, and I even just mentioned it, touching upon it briefly yesterday, there were women, a lot of whom who lived in and around Dallas, that were concerned about that. And I guess my question then becomes, well, why does one individual or even a small group, why do their rights trump the rights of women? And as a woman, I have to tell you, I find it to be a little patriarchal. That's just me, just kind of putting that out. What is your thought on this?
Well, look, this bathroom ordinance by the city of Dallas puts women and children at risk. It threatens common sense and freedom and safety. The language from the ordinance itself says about someone's perception of their gender identity. And that means that a biological male can think of himself as a woman and then go into the women's bathroom. That is exactly what this does. That is exactly what they tried to do in Houston, and that's why it failed 61-39 when the voters got to speak. That's why Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has already weighed in on this. That's why State Senator Don Huffines has already weighed on this and asked for this to be reconsidered. And this isn't hypothetical. There's already a video up by the campaign of Houston showing that an actual child predator, a sex offender in Dallas, was reported of going into a woman's bathroom and was cited for it. And so it's already happening, unfortunately, in the city of Dallas. And that's why when the voters actually get to speak, they're going to vote this down.
If those protections were already provided in the ordinance, what was the need to? Why was there a need to change the language?
We have an LGBT task force, and the trans members of that task force looked at the law and said, look, sexual orientation has nothing to do with gender identity. Our issues are different. And they said, what we need to do is break this out into its own section, just to make the law clear.
But you could still have a straight man going into the women's restroom. who identifies as transgender, because just because one is transgender doesn't mean that they're gay.
That's true.
So you could have ultimately a situation where you have a straight man who, goes into and shares a restroom space with women. I mean, as a woman, it does make me a little uncomfortable.
Like Caitlyn Jenner? Yeah, we would have Caitlyn Jenner use the women's room.
We got just less than about 20 seconds left. Jonathan, last word.
Look, yeah, well, it's clear the council member has conceded that this is a bathroom bill. This applies to bathrooms, just as he admitted, as we all know,